Hello, movers, shakers, and changemakers. Welcome. This is Vivek Modi, your host for today's episode of AES Speaker Series. Today, we are honored to have Professor Dr. Gunther Friedl with us. A warm welcome to you, Professor. Now, before I introduce Professor and today's topic, allow me to briefly say a few words about Asian European Society. Founded in 2019, Asian European Society provides a platform for students and young professionals to create cross-cultural connections. Our mission is to foster intracultural respect and understanding between Asia and Europe. We started as a student society at Technical University of Munich, and we are slowly growing into a global community with members in different parts of the world. In addition to speaker series, we also organize corporate workshops and a wide range of social events. If our work interests you, get in touch with us on aesmuc.de or on our social media handles. I will quickly walk you through the structure of the event. First, I'll introduce the topic, then our guest speaker will give a keynote, followed by a moderated Q&A session. I highly encourage all of you to submit your questions and ideas start from the beginning. You can do so by using the Q&A function on your screen. Now, coming to today's topic, education. One of the most important elements of human life and for the development of the societies. Trends such as globalization, technological innovation are changing the way we learn and the way we implement those learnings. Black swan events such as COVID pandemic have accelerated these trends and disruptions, and education is not spared from it either. On the other side, skill demand in the job market is also changing. In this rapidly changing economies and societies, universities play an important role as an epicenter of knowledge and a source of global talent. As the second largest university in Germany, with 34% students coming from abroad, the Technical University of Munich holds a key position in shaping the future of education. But the question is, how does the future of education look like? What does the future hold for roughly 50.6 million students across the globe? What does a university of 21st century need to succeed? And this brings me to our today's speaker, Professor Friedl. He's a business economist born in Munich. After studying physics and business economics, he did his doctorate and afterwards served as a professor at Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich. He also served at Stanford University and Johannes Gutenberg University. Since 2007, he has been serving as a professor of management accounting, and in 2010, he took the responsibility as the dean of the TUM School of Management. He's also actively engaged and contributing his expertise to institutions such as Advisory Council of Munich Minister of Trade and Commerce, Deutsche Schutzvereinigung für Wertpapierbesitz, Ludwigs Frohla Institute, Center for Energy Markets, TUM. He's an editor at Junior Management Science Journal and a reviewer of several journals and conferences. Furthermore, he has been honored with a number of awards, especially for his excellence in teaching. Now, we have been looking so much forward to hear you, Professor. So the stage is yours.
Slides that I have that I have prepared, and let me check whether this works now. So what you should see now is basically the slide that shows my name and my affiliation. And now let me go to a very first person that I think has challenged the way we think about universities quite a lot in the recent couple of years. This person is Scott Galloway. He used to be a clinical professor of marketing at NYU Stern School of Business, and what he basically says is that we will see dramatic changes at universities that are fostered by the current pandemic. And what he basically says is that the best universities in the world will be able to expand enrollment dramatically, simply due to the fact because we are now all getting used to remote learning. This is what we have experienced now in Germany and all over the world, beginning with February, March last year. All the education, all the learning moved online. And we have seen that some universities better cope with that situation, other worse. The university system, the higher education system in total, coped with the situation very well. That was a difference, by the way, to the school system in many countries where there had been much more difficulty in coping with that situation. But now, if it is the case that you basically can access courses from everywhere in the world, why should you go to the courses of your next door university? So the regional element will lose, and there will be much larger institutions, and in particular the large institutions will be the winners. This will be also somehow a winner takes it all economy, as in many other industries. And we will probably see also these partnerships between the largest tech companies and elite universities. There had been some announced partnerships between companies like Microsoft and some of these institutions. MIT and Google are partnering, Microsoft and Berkeley, for example. We also try to be part of that game at TUM, but we are still very at the beginning of this dramatic change. So I think that is something that you should keep in mind, a dramatic change of the industry of higher education. And there is another person that inspired me quite a bit, Otto Scharmer, who is basically a German. He's affiliated with MIT, Sloan School of Business, as well as Tsinghua University in Beijing. And he says that the lack of vertical literacy is the main problem in our universities. Now, what is vertical literacy? That is basically the ability of students, of our future shapers of the world, to lead transformational change. Experienced CEOs and CPOs, when talking about what they really need, they commonly say, we need people, we need teams, we need leaders that are able to understand and to deal with our extremely volatile world, the so-called VUCA world. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, you all have heard about that. And the only way to deal with that is vertical literacy. That is basically a learning environment where you not only learn the basics of accounting and marketing and computer science, but where you also get the next step to apply this knowledge in a world and to basically combine your knowledge with the world and to transform that to the ability to basically influence other people to go with you into the direction that basically will make the change. So this ability is typically not taught in a classroom. And that is also the reason why the first development, moving everything online, will not be the solution to everything, because if you learn online, then we have still extreme difficulty in enabling you to address real world problems. When we have implemented at the School of Management some action learning elements, some elements where you learn together with practice. being it capstone projects, we name that Projektstudien, being it case seminars where you apply and where you develop real life cases together with companies. This is something where you really go to the next step, where you basically apply what you learn, where you transform the society in which you basically are. And these considerations lead basically to several principles that are absolutely necessary in order to be a successful university in the 21st century. And the first and overall principle is you may never stop evolving. As a university, as a person, you need to fully embrace change. Lifelong learning becomes a key because simply you cannot go to a university with the perspective, now let's learn for 3 or 5 years and then leave the university and then you are prepared. I mean, we as a university have the responsibility to enable you to basically embrace this mindset of a lifelong learner. This is not necessarily that the universities are those who provide the learning environment, but you need to basically learn at the university, to understand at the university, which environment enables you to learn and grow. I think a diverse and international environment is key. That was one of the reasons why I was one of the persons who pushed the TUM School of Management towards an English-speaking TUM School of Management. When we started 10 years, when I started 10 years ago, my deanship, then most of the courses were German courses, and in the meanwhile we have switched even the bachelor program to an English-speaking track where we can enable students that do not speak German to come, and that is, I think, extremely important to foster this international environment. 10 years ago, we had 8% international students in our bachelor program, and 5% of them were from Austria. So you can have, you feel how international that really was, and this has now dramatically changed. We are almost at 30% in our bachelor program. At least the beginner's cohort is, I think, even beyond the 30%. What is also important is that you basically think about, as a university, about sustainable business models. What we also see right now during this pandemic is that students are questioning whether they should continue paying 30,000, 40,000 euros, dollars for bachelor, master programs where they basically where they ask themselves, do they get a value out of that, and is that the right value? I think universities need to think very carefully about that, but they also cannot simply rely on the state will finance everything, because that is also not the right thing to do. Improving teaching is something that is a continuous effort, and when you ask me where do we have weaknesses, then I would say a lot in teaching, because we still have not fully understood how to deal with excellent, how to enable excellent teaching over the entire programs of our university. I think what is also important is that the universities will take a role in a regional ecosystem. So if we look at Munich as an example, with the universities here, Technical University of Munich, Ludwig Maximilians University of Munich, then the startup ecosystem that is very well connected with the universities, the city of Munich that basically creates rooms for collaborations, important companies that basically are the those who are happy to receive the graduates from the universities, but maybe also the graduates from startups that have failed, and then with that experience can help in established companies make a difference, or the startups that have not failed and basically collaborate with these large companies. So this entire ecosystem I think gets more and more important, and we see that as the Technical University of Munich also evolving right now in the city of Heilbronn, which is 120,000 population city north of Stuttgart. And here there is also now a very deliberate effort to create such an ecosystem that makes a difference and that pushes the region forward, but also that generates a real attraction for people to enter, to move to that city. I think also Berlin has done fantastically in creating this ecosystem. And finally, we need to have a very elaborated societal dialogue between research and practice, between science and business, between academics and politicians. So we need to basically create those platforms. And I'm happy, Vivek, that you also are creating such kind of a platform. At least I understand it that way, that you with the society. I think here also the universities must play a role in providing these platforms, enabling those. It is not necessary that everything must basically come from the president or the dean or whatever from a university. If students basically get motivated by the whole ecosystem of the university of creating these kinds of platforms, then I think that is fantastic. And maybe since I run more quickly out of time than I thought, let me also think let me also tell you what I think are important areas in which universities should basically be active. And I think universities should in particular look at the pressing global challenges. What are the pressing global challenges? If you ask the United Nations, and I think it's reasonable to ask them, then they have basically developed what they call the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. These 17 goals, these 17 SDGs have been developed in a worldwide process and have been basically brought to life 5 years ago. And we decided as a school, as the School of Management at Technical University of Munich, that this is a great and important starting point for everything that we do. We cannot basically work on every SDG as a school and as a university. But if the world has identified these goals as the most pressing goals, and the most important objectives that mankind should follow, then it's clear that as a university, we need to make a contribution to that. And there are so many basically opportunities to make a contribution to that, that it is difficult where to start. As a university, we made an effort to basically ask our students, ask our professors, our academia, what are the areas you are already working in, and what are the areas you're interested in. We ask students what are the topics that you would like to see in our programs in order to basically make our programs and our research more relevant for these pressing challenges. And out of that, several initiatives has been developed, and just to name a few, we have started a Center for Energy Markets, and this Center for Energy Markets is addressing exactly this topic of climate change. Climate change. Here you see the SDG number 7, affordable and clean energy, where we say we want to make a contribution to that. And that is something where we also can contribute as a technical university, because at a technical university, we are able to understand and move forward technology. And as a school of management, which is in the meanwhile one of the largest school of managements in Germany, we are able to basically do the economic valuation here, and bringing that together creates new opportunities that have already led to startups, to new businesses that have been developed, but also to new research results on basically the viability of an hydrogen economy and things like that. And to give you another example, what we also did in an extremely, I would say, in an extremely broad way, is to foster entrepreneurship, because we think that entrepreneurship is the means to change our world towards these sustainable development objectives. The entrepreneur is typically one that is motivated by a big idea, and it is not rarely the case that this big idea is inspired, at least by these by these sustainable development goals. And now what we want to educate is not so much those who basically say, well, I want to learn how accounting works and then work as an accountant in a large company. I mean, we are happy if we educate those, but we rather want to educate those who say, well, I want to make a difference in the world. And we want to basically make students familiar with what they can contribute to the world, and we want to equip them with the resources to maybe found their own companies, or at least be part of a team that of a new and a fresh idea. And that has been quite successful. And here what we have already achieved, and maybe I skip the next couple of slides and show you this one as the last ones. We have now, with 8 professors and more than 20 researchers, one of the largest entrepreneurship research community here in Europe. We have a lot of courses where we serve more than 3,000 students a year in our Entrepreneurship Research Institute. There are successful applications. We have a number of startups that have come out of that. I have just named a few of them. And this is only what we do at the School of Management. And when we look broader at the entire Technical University of Munich, you might see that the Unternehmertum, that has in the meanwhile more than 150 employees, is doing a lot in order to enable this startup ecosystem to excel. There is a center in Garching, and there is a new building that will be opened in 2021 in downtown Munich, the Munich Urban Co-Lab, that is also devoted to entrepreneurship, where I think we as a technical university can make a huge difference, bringing together the entrepreneurship and the technology topics, and basically enabling them to make a change in the world. So as a university in the 21st century, I think you need to have a broader perspective than only doing research and teaching. You have to find your role in society. You have to find your purpose within the society, define this purpose, and then act accordingly. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm happy to discuss these topics with you now.
Well, thank you very much, Professor, for an interesting and insightful session. And cannot agree anymore on your last sentence on the purpose. I think that's core of everything that you do. So all the participants, you can start asking questions by using the Q&A function. We already see a couple of questions have come in. And I would like to begin the Q&A session, Professor, with knowing your opinion on what is education in your view, and what is the difference between education and learning?
Yeah, very good question. So, I mean, when you talk about learning, then you're talking about the person who learns. Then this is obviously the user, the maker. And when you talk about education, then you talk about the broader system, broader system that basically allows you to that is necessary in order to allow learners to make a learning journey. The way how you teach will be included, and I think the education system must be constructed in a way, as I said it before, according to Otto Schermer, it should enable this vertical literacy. So education should not be only a single teacher-learner interaction where you say, well, there's a teacher and there's a learner, and the teacher tells the learner what to do. The education system must inspire everybody to be an agent of change. And this is the challenge, how to do that on a large-scale basis, how to implement this idea at the university. This is exactly what is necessary. And sometimes this gets lost, but I think there are so many great examples at the university where you see exactly this type of education at work.
So following that, Professor, I have another question, and you also briefly touched this point during your keynote. Someone has said that you do not, so education or learning basically is free in today's world. And you need universities not only to learn or educate, but rather to get a certificate. What are your views on this?
So I think that giving access to education, to learning, to as many people as possible is an extremely important objective. And it is clear that we cannot restrict our university system to a system where only the privileged, those who can afford, can get in. I think it must be much broader, and technology enables us to do it much broader. Not sure whether the current MOOCs are already the massive open online courses are already the right tool. So I mean, I think we are quite successful in a recent survey on edX, which is one of these large platforms. Two of the TUM School of Management courses are, in fact, the two most attractive courses, the two most signed up courses. So I think we have quite successes here, but it's still the we do not still graduate too many of those people who are enrolled there. And I think we need to think more deeply about how we can basically activate those people who are taking part in these MOOCs. I think this is a great example of how to basically bring education and learning experiences to those who are not able to enroll in a university. And at the same time, a university must think carefully about how to basically finance their, I would say, learning and education platform. So if a university is only developing MOOCs and does not have a reasonable, I would say, business model, somewhere somebody must finance the activities, being it the state, the Free State of Bavaria in our case, to a large extent, being it donors, being it alumni, or being it the students itself. So I think there must be a viable business model for any university, otherwise the university cannot fulfill this goal of bringing basically education and learning to large, to our world's population.
Professor, before we move to the next question, may I request you to stop sharing the screen?
Of course, sorry.
Great. Well, we are flooded with the Q&A part. So many questions in, so please bear with us, the participants. We'll try to cover most of them. One of our participants asked that you briefly touched about abilities of professor in teaching, and that's one of the areas where we need some improvisation. So the participant asks that at TUM, the recruitment process of professors is very much based on the research capabilities. And what do you think in this regard?
Yeah, so it's correct. At almost all research institutions, research plays an important role in the recruitment process. And I think that is correct so, because we have this we have this interaction between research and teaching. And if we cannot teach well if the research is weak. We need the best researchers that are at the forefront of research to then do the also best teaching. And I don't think that we should reduce our quality standards, our quality requirements when it comes to research. But I also agree, teaching does sometimes not the necessary role in the recruitment process. So sometimes, I mean, we invite our students to check the teaching. We also ask for teaching statements in the recruiting process. And sometimes, I mean, at least at TUM School of Management, I also have experienced that sometimes some extremely good researchers did not pass the bar because of the lack of teaching capabilities. So I think in that regard, it works, but you're right, we could do even more to basically assess that. But I also have to say, if you hire a brilliant person in research, then it is more easy, and I think we do not enough here, to make him a brilliant teacher than the other way around. Somebody who is a brilliant teacher and cannot do any research, this cannot be trained anymore. But the other way works, and I have seen a lot of examples where you have seen in the first year student feedback of teachers that was awful, and in the second year they simply had a coach talking to them, asked for the student feedback and tried to learn from that, and they even get. I can also tell you from my experience. I mean, when I did my first English language course at the University of Mainz a couple of years ago, have been almost they almost wanted me to go out of the classroom. It took 2 years, and then I received the Best Teacher Award for that course, exact the same class.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense, Professor. The next question is, how do startups, so that's from Ravi, and Ravi asks, how do startups entering Munich from another country leverage the strategic insights and resources from TU Munich and its ecosystem?
So if you're a startup from another country and you relocate to Munich, is that the question? How to basically make best use of these resources? So I would strongly recommend if you're a student, then it's clear, then you have access to all the opportunities that you have at TUM, and that is in particular the CDTM, the Center for Digital Technology and Management, where you can basically try to get into. There are different programs, the Manage More programs, and so on. But if you are not a TUM student, and if you are simply a startup, there are ways to connect with Unternehmertum, with our startup incubator. Talk to them. They have different programs for incubating companies that do not need to have necessarily TUM attachment, and there it should. So from that, it should work. There are also startup competitions where you can apply for as a non-Munich based startup, and that gives you at least attention to the investor ecosystem, for example, in Munich, and that would enable you to at least get some attention here.
I think, Ravi, you can check out CTDM and the Munich Starter System in general, as Professor recommended. Moving forward to our next question, you also touched this point in your keynote, Professor. And the participant asks, many universities, such as in US and other part of the world, charge very high fees on education. And in past few years, it has been raising more than the inflation rate. Whereas in Germany, education is free most of the times. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of both the systems? And how would you put TUM in compared to Ivy League US universities?
I mean, it's clear the Ivy League universities in the US, they charge huge tuition fees, and they are under some pressure, also from society, because also the individuals ask themselves, is it really appropriate to pay that many fees? We have seen that during the pandemic, where Ivy League universities move their courses online, and then students ask the question, is it really still justified to pay 60,000 or even more for an online class that I could also get for free in a massive online course? Now, I think it has some value if you need to pay for your education, because we know that those who pay put more emphasis on the whole learning experience. So that is one thing that happens if you pay. However, if that prevents the best and brightest people due to a social the social barrier to get higher education, then this is clearly wrong. And what happens in the US is that I at least think that there is a much broader heterogeneity in society. You see that right now in these days when you look at the election and the aftermath of the election, because you see this division in the society in the US, and I think we are. This is one of the advantages of the German system of higher education, where basically the taxpayer pays for education. So the education in general is a bit, I would say, so the general level of education might be a bit lower than the educational level at the Ivy League universities. I agree with that, because we spend less. We spend about 6,000 euro for each business student a year. And in the US, you pay 50, 60,000 as one student per year. So you see that these universities can spend more than we can, because it's free, and that has consequences on the quality. So we have larger classes, we have not this individual training, and that is something where we need to find a balance, and we experiment with that. So we have at the School of Management, we have some master programs, executive MBA programs where we charge tuition fees in order to experiment with those, and we also have a lot of programs where we do not charge anything. And if we compare those, we find that we have extreme great quality of students in our non-fee based classes, and the brightest people there really excel, but it's a bit more difficult in large classes to basically, if you're not used to this type of learning, if you need somebody to discuss with, if you need a more one-to-one interaction, then it's more difficult here. So advantages and disadvantages of these two systems. I personally, I'm convinced about the German system, but I also think that we need a bit more freedom for doing more experiments in terms of tuition fees.
So talking about the high tuition fees and what you just mentioned, that students were questioning this high amount of tuition fees when the lessons moved online. One of the participants asked that completion rate of MOOC courses are typically around 15%. And will we see an increase in students' drop-off rates in universities if universities move entirely online?
Yeah, I think so. We have no data on that so far, but I think this is exactly the danger. What I already know is that there are much more students than before having some problems with exactly the situation that they are in. So the isolation, you as a professor, you cannot care so much about these students because you are. There is the distance barrier between you and the students, psychological problems. So I would expect that we will face such a situation where dropout rates will increase in the next years.
Mm-hmm. Next question is from Simon. And Professor, you yourself, you have been to a couple of countries for teaching and also studying probably. So Simon asks, education becomes more and more international, and how can we combine different cultural education approaches, as the way in which knowledge is produced might vary across cultures?
I mean, first of all, I just have to have to encourage everybody to make as international experience as possible. And there is obviously a difference if you study in Germany or if you study in China or if you study in Brazil or the US. So these are different environments with entirely different cultures. And I would like to encourage you to make as much of an experience as possible. If you do a bachelor and a master program, then just do the bachelor on another continent than the master program, if possible. During the bachelor program, spend some time, some semester abroad, and during the master program, if possible, as well. That makes you, that creates this international environment. In terms of culture and teaching, I mean, it's clear there are some. There are even differences here in Germany, I would say. Many people say in Bavaria, the schooling system rather educates those who are quiet in class and do not question too much. I'm not sure whether it's true, but this could be true. But if you look to Russia, and then you find completely other students and learning environments than if you go to the US, for example. So. All of these examples, I mean, the interesting thing is that, for example, the Russian students in math are extremely good, and the learning environment there fosters the math knowledge, obviously. And also, if we 10 years ago, when looking at our students and those from MIT, then I would say our students typically did not have any problems when they entered MIT courses in terms of the quantitative capabilities. But the other way around, it was the case. And that was something that struck me, and that has to do with culture, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Coming from India, I can very much relate to that. So the next question goes into a bit of job market side. As per Goldman Sachs' recent study, 1/3 of present jobs will be automized in next few years. Additionally, COVID pandemic has raised additional challenges in terms of securing an employment. What is TUM doing to prepare students navigating through these tough times and groom them to meet the needs of the future job market?
Yeah, I mean, when looking at TUM, we are, I would say, one of those who have most benefits from these changes, because the changes are largely technology driven, and what we basically educate is a literacy on these technology issues. Mm-hmm. Everything we do. So, and I think that is important. So if you are, so this change is a technology driven change, and you should, if you are reluctant to new technologies, this would be a problem in this changing environment. And what we do is basically we enable students to understand the drivers behind these technological changes, but also the content of these technological changes. So when it comes to additive manufacturing, when it comes to quantum computing, when it comes to biotechnological developments, as a TUM student, you have exposure to that. And that is necessary in order to basically understand what is ahead. And that is also what employers are looking at. So they want to have students and graduates that are fluent with these technological advancements that we have, and that are able to basically contribute to them. And I think that is exactly what we are doing, not from a purely theoretical standpoint. I mean, this is important as well, but also by providing enough interaction opportunities for our students with industry to see whether the things that they are doing are really relevant. So in that sense, I would say I think we are prepared for that. And you as a student, you should not worry. I have more worries about students from institutions where technology does not play any role, because here the question always is, I mean, it's clear if you learn about the history of the 16th century in France, then it is an important topic, I agree, and it's a very interesting topic. But the question that I would ask myself is, where is in what way would it enable me to make a contribution to society then, and a valued contribution to society where somebody else is basically willing to pay me a salary for that? And that is exactly where I think TUM, TUM does things.
The next question, Professor, is from Georg. We have some EdTech startup enthusiasts in the audience, and he asks, what technologies are important in your view to for a university and for an effective learning environment?
So I think the most important one is probably usability, and usability on all sides, from the teacher, from the learner. So any technology that can be used easily, that would basically make a change. You see that here with Zoom, everybody uses Zoom because it's easy to use. Where we need technology, more technology, is basically in giving feedback to students about their deficits in their areas where they should learn. And that basically requires intelligent ways of collecting data about students, what they already can, and providing then a very timely feedback on what they have already learned, what they need to learn. And this is extremely difficult, because that is not only, so you cannot only click a box where you say, now you have understood the financial statements and accounting, and now you have understood the marketing strategies. Because if I said already, we need vertical literacy. We need the ability to make transformational changes, and we are not even we do not even understand what that how to translate that basically in something that we can check whether that we have already achieved that experience. But that, so if you ask me about technology here, then in this feedback for students, I think that data about what they know and how to give them, to guide them, that would be extremely helpful.
So the participant who asked this question, Georg, you have a new startup idea now. Start working. The next question is, TUM's only campus abroad is in Singapore. Why Asia?
I mean, this decision has been made by the former president, Wolfgang Herrmann, and that was one of the first decisions he made when he started his presidency. When I was listening to him on the justification why Asia, he said, well, because that is the region of the world where where we need to look at in the next in the next decades, and therefore we need to be present here. And I think it's still true. So a presence in Asia helps us. Not sure whether we have already reached our full potential with our presence in TUM Asia, so we could do certainly a lot more there, but I think if you look at the world from a geopolitical perspective, then Asia is a clear target to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also the shift of Ivy League universities from US and UK or Europe focused region to now Asia is another indicator of what you just mentioned, Professor.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you look at the development of Asian universities over the last 2-3 decades, then it's incredible. And you see that in, if you look at simply, if you have worldwide university rankings, you see this rise. You can simply count the number of Asian universities, and you see an increasing number in each and any year.
So Rafael's question is in the lines to what we mentioned. He asks, how important is the name of the educational institute compared to the quality in the eyes of labor market? And would you see this, how would you see this changing in coming years?
Yeah, brand is extremely important in this context, because yeah, that is basically what Scott Galloway said in this winner takes it all mentality. If you do not know where and what to study, then it is clear that you will be guided by maybe the brand name. If you do not know whether to buy what smartphone to buy, you will probably go for those smartphone that has the best name, the best brand. Sometimes it's too expensive, then you go for a cheaper one, but so that is exactly what drives here, and that therefore I think this is important. If you ask me with respect to content, is there a huge difference between what you learn at let's say Stanford and what you learn at the University of Regensburg? Then I would say, if you look at the single courses and the content of the single courses, and I can only talk about business administration, but no, also from there's not so much of a difference. But that is not what universities are here. So you should not think about universities basically as a sum of the course contents of their programs. What universities offer are ecosystems of exchange places of ideas, abilities to connect. So you're there, you make friends, you have you learn how to collaborate in an environment that stimulates you, and it is important with whom you basically make these connections. And that is exactly the difference that a brand name institution does from an institution that does not have that strong brand name. And I think here you should be, if you have the ability to select, then be selective with regard to institution, not necessarily only for the brand name, also for the content. But if you look at the content, consider the entire ecosystem that will be offered there.
So, Professor, we are reaching towards the end of the session, and we still have some questions in the chat box. So if you have a couple of extra minutes, I would try to cover some of them.
Mm-hmm.
One of the participants asks, how is TUM management alumni giving back what they learned from TUM to the society?
Our alumni are, or let me put it differently. So as a German university, I would say we have compared to the Ivy League universities in the US, relatively weak alumni connections. However, there are a number of important alumni that are really willing and giving back, and in different ways. Sometimes even in monetary ways, what we like, but it's I think we can extend that. But also in terms of being guest lecturer in our courses, being mentors in our mentor programs for our freshman students, providing abilities to cooperate for students in terms of project studies. So this is exactly where alumni now play an increasingly important role. We have a lot of alumni at TUM. We have more than 100,000 alumni, and those are exactly doing that. And it's I would say we as a university still have huge potential there that we can leverage. We could do more, but I think we have already done something, and I think it's working fine.
I think some of the examples you showed, the startups, Celonis and others, are also contributing a lot towards TUM students and corporate collaboration. And
exactly. So if you look at Celonis alone, I mean, Celonis is one of the founders. The founders came from TUM. One was in the Finance and Information Management Master. The founders are regularly back at TUM for giving guest talks. We have many students that now have started at Celonis. You can check that via LinkedIn, for example. There you see how many there are really working. And we have a lot of project studies, bachelor thesis, master thesis that are in collaboration with Celonis. One recent bachelor thesis, by the way, of one of my students here at the chair of management accounting, won a prestigious award of the ICV, International Controller Club, and that is so. This is the way how it basically works. So take another example, Kinexon. They have been founded also from PhD students here at TUM School of Management, and have now made huge successes with the Safe Zone technology that protects basically employees in companies in order to keep social distancing. And we also have implemented this, at least we have started implementing that at our new campus in Heilbronn, where also these alumni connections help to basically establish this relationship.
Mm-hmm. So, Professor, in terms of questions, this would be my last question before we dive into a bit fun, quick rapid fire round. 10 years as a Dean of TUM School of Management, what was your proudest moment?
I mean, typically, my proudest moments are the moments when when we are graduating our students at our faculty graduation ceremony. This is really the highlight of every year. And when you get then a feedback that says you really did, you made a change to my life, then I think it's something where I know that it was right to spend some time for this job here.
Thank you very much, Professor. And now we are going to start our rapid fire round, where I will ask you very quick questions, and you, without thinking, you got to reply in 1 or 2 seconds. So are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Complete the sentence. A world without TUM would be?
An empty one.
German education system in next 10 years will be?
More international and more inclusive.
In a post-COVID world, the universities would stop doing?
Would hopefully not stop working and hopefully not stop giving face-to-face lectures.
If you were not a professor, you would be?
Probably managing a technology company, hopefully an entrepreneurial startup.
Your favorite subject as a student was?
My favorite subject?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember any favorite subjects.
All right, we move to the next one. A question that you don't want to be asked.
How old are you?
All right, now choose any one of the followings: TUM or LMU?
TUM.
Elon Musk or Steve Jobs?
Steve Jobs.
Stocks or bonds?
Stocks.
Consulting or investment banking? Startup or jobs?
Startup.
Marketing or finance?
Finance.
All right. Then we are at the end of the session. And once again, Professor, thank you very much. It has been excellent session, so insightful, so interesting, and it was fun. Thank you very much to, sorry, Professor, you were saying something.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vivek. It was a pleasure to be with you, and it was fun, as you said.
Thank you very much to all the participants. I will quickly launch a feedback survey. I'll request you to fill it up. It helps us in getting better. And meanwhile, you fill up the survey. If you like the session, stay tuned with us. We are committed to bringing food for your thought and a treat to your intellect. I will give you a couple of more seconds to fill up the survey. And if you want to get in touch with Professor Friedl, follow him on LinkedIn. If you like our work and you want to get in touch with us, go to aesmuc.de or follow us on our social media handles. On this note, this is Vivek Modi signing off. Have a great evening and take care of yourself. Thank you very much, Professor, once again.
Thank you. Bye-bye, and have a great afternoon.